Hey guys, I'm kind of sleepy, really sleepy actually, not really. Okay, I'll be honest, I'm not really sleepy, but I'm kind of sleepy. I'm gonna be obviously reading to you some American history. It's really cool for you guys who are members of the church, my friends. Um, there's a section in our history book about the Mormons and picture of the Nauvoo Temple, Brigham Young. We've got a solid 2 pages in here, 2.5 pages. That's pretty awesome. Anyway, so yeah, I don't know. I think making videos always makes me feel better because I always just am able to just talk about whatever I feel or whatever I'm going through or anything like that, and get to be productive in the meantime at the same time. So I got 45 minutes till my next class. Just been out here in my car chilling, just trying to get some peace or something. Looking for some peace. I've been here all day at school, which is great. Got a lot of schoolwork done. Just got out of psych class a little bit ago. I think I'm really learning the hard way that I got to start eating less, because I think my body's telling me you just can't eat this much anymore. And that's quite an adjustment to make because, when you're used to eating a certain amount, you're used to eating that much, and it's hard to just change, But man, it's nice. Everything looks so HD. It's kind of random, but I'm noticing everything seems so HD. Anyway, so American history. Yes, American history. We're going to read a little bit here and get to the productive portion of this video. So we're in chapter 12. We have reached the mid 18th century. Wish these people would hurry up and drive by instead of talking to each other. But they're from Florida, so that's why. I'm just kidding. Yes, we're about midway through the 1800s. And there was a wave of religious excitement in the United States, and now there's also romanticism. And we're talking about transcendentalism. And so there's some talk. I am drowsy. I'm really drowsy. I feel really drowsy. I hope I don't bore you guys. Maybe not. We're starting to talk about Ralph Waldo Emerson, Henry David Thoreau, Margaret Fuller, people like that. So without further ado, we're just going to go right into it. Yeah. Okay, the Transcendental Club. The Transcendental Club. In 1836, a diverse, informal discussion group that came to be called the Transcendental Club began to meet in Boston and nearby Concord to discuss philosophy, literature, and religion. In describing life in Concord, writer Nathaniel Hawthorne said, he's a famous writer, said, "There never was a poor little country village infested with such a variety of queer, strangely dressed, oddly behaved mortals." The club included cultural rebels, social critics, liberal clergymen, utopian reformers, militant abolitionists, innovative writers, and women such as Elizabeth Peabody, her sister Sophia, who married Hawthorne, and Margaret Fuller, the author of Woman in the 19th Century, 1845. A dazzling conversationalist, Fuller organized a transcendentalist discussion group that met in Peabody's Boston bookstore. Their conversations were designed to embolden women to think and act for themselves. Fuller helped launch and edit The Dial, 1840 to 1844, an experimental transcendentalist magazine that introduced European romanticism to American readers. A much greater range of occupations, Fuller asserted, must be made available to women to enable them to express their full potential. So he's definitely saying women are repressed. in this society at this time. There's a picture of Margaret Fuller here, and it says, Margaret Fuller, May 23rd, 1810 to July 1850. Wow, she was only 40. She only lived to be 40. Pretty average around then. I think the average lifespan was like 45. Margaret Fuller was an illustrious American journalist, editor, and critic. In 1839, she began a conversation group among Boston's women that led to the classic treatise, Woman in the 19th Century. Drowned in a shipwreck at age 40. Well, that's one way to die. That's if you drown in a shipwreck, you definitely die that way. That's definitely a way to die. Margaret Fuller is the tragic heroine of the Transcendentalist movement. Henry David Thoreau. Ralph Waldo Emerson's friend, Henry David Thoreau, 14 years younger, practiced the thoughtful self-reliance. Oh snap, I got my book balanced on my steering wheel. Oh man, we're really going now. Let's see here. Ralph Waldo Emerson's friend, Henry David Thoreau, 14 years younger, practiced the thoughtful self-reliance and pursuit of perfection that Emerson preached. Quote, I like people who can do things, end quote, Emerson said. And Thoreau could do many things: carpentry, masonry, painting, surveying, sailing, gardening, lecturing. Thoreau was America's original wild child. Armed with a headstrong sense of uncompromising integrity, prickly individuality, and proud rebelliousness, he loved to unearth forbidden questions and lay bare everyday hypocrisies. If a man does not keep peace with his companions, he wrote, perhaps it is best he hears a different drummer. Ooh, I like that. So if you don't fit in with your people, maybe you need to find new people. Very interesting. Here's a picture of this dude. I'll show you guys in a minute. Thoreau described himself as a mystic, a transcendentalist, and a natural philosopher who questioned tradition and challenged authority. Emerson delighted in Thoreau, whom he called stubborn and implacable, always manly and wise, but rarely sweet. A neighbor was more blunt. I love Henry, said Elizabeth Hoar. Elizabeth Hoar, H-O-A-R, Hoar. Sounds worse every time I say it. I love Henry, said Elizabeth Hoar, but I do not like him. I get that. Born in Concord in 1817, Thoreau attended Harvard, worked as a teacher, and then helped his father, a celebrated pencil maker. All right, pencil pushing son of a gun. I make pencils. You push them, I make them. No. Like Emerson, however, Thoreau frequently escaped to the woods to absorb nature's spiritual energies. He viewed the indescribable innocence of nature as a living Bible. The earth to him was a form of poetry. This is the transcendentalism in him. That's how all these transcendentalists were. They're all always like that, you know. Let's be in nature. Let's rub leaves on our face. No. Yeah, the earth to him was a form of poetry, full of hidden meanings. Christianity, he believed, was an institution corroded by hypocrisy and bureaucracy. His priorities were inward. Thoreau showed little interest in social life and no interest in wealth. The mass of men, he wrote, lead lives of quiet desperation. Because they were preoccupied with making money and exploiting nature, Thoreau yearned to escape the constraints of stuffy traditions, unjust laws, and the opinions of his elders. He committed himself to what Emerson called a simple life, centered on plain living and high thinking. Thoreau rented a room at the Emerson home where he attended the garden, worked as a handyman, and took long walks with his host. In 1844, when Emerson bought 14 acres along Walden Pond, Thoreau decided to embark upon an unusual experiment in self-reliance. On July 4th, 1845, just shy of his 28th birthday, Thoreau took to the woods to live in a tiny one-room cabin he had built at Walden Pond, a mile outside of Concord. His hut featured 3 chairs, 1 for solitude, 2 for friendship, and 3 for society. Ooh, he's a deep thinker, this guy. People nowadays would call him crazy. Living at Walden Pond was Thoreau's personal declaration of independence. His goal was to deliver what nature had to teach about those things that money can't buy. Amen. I went to the woods because I wished to live deliberately, he wrote in Walden, or Life in the Woods, 1854, and not when I came to die. I went to the woods because I wished to live deliberately, and not when I came to die, discover that I had not lived. Thoreau ate only 1 meal a day and disdained coffee, alcohol, jam, tobacco, and salt. Very interesting. He regarded sex with disgust and suspicion. His minimalist ethic led Emerson to observe that he was never affectionate but superior didactic, meaning self-taught. Autodidactic is self-taught. Forever scorning his neighbors and claiming that he was more favored by the gods. Walden contains some of the most evocative nature writing in American literature. A first-rate naturalist, Thoreau was blessed with superhuman powers of observation. He urged readers to open their eyes and hearts to the infinite spontaneity of everyday sensory experiences. We can never have enough of nature, he wrote. We need to witness our own limits transgressed, and some life pasturing freely where we never wander. Couldn't agree more. The dude is on to something. He's on to something. To Thoreau, there was something sacred and liberating. Sacred and liberating about nature's beauty and sensuality. His ecstatic descriptions of the natural world made him the patron saint of the environmental movement. Nearly 1 million people visited his cabin site at Walden Pond each year. And wildness is the preservation of the world, he wrote, and his scriptural statement later became the motto of the Sierra Club. During Thoreau's 2 years, 2 months, and 2 days at Walden Pond, his conscience was pricked by the abolitionist movement. He harbored a freedom seeker and considered President James K. Polk's declaration of war against Mexico an unjust action pushed by Southern cotton planters eager to add more slave territory. His disgust for the war led him to refuse to pay taxes, for which he was locked up in the Middlesex County Jail. For only one night, an aunt paid his overdue bill. This incident inspired Thoreau to write his classic essay, Civil Disobedience, 1849, which would influence Martin Luther King, Jr. Don't they mean Dr. Martin Luther King? In shaping the civil rights movement 100 years later. If the law is of such a nature that it requires you to be an agent of injustice to another, Thoreau wrote, then I say, break the law. Until his death in 1862, Thoreau kept a journal of close observations and philosophical reflections. He also attacked slavery and applauded those who worked to undermine it. The continuing influence of his creed of individual action against injustice shows the impact that a thoughtful person can have on an imperfect world. I like this dude. In American literature, Henry David Thoreau and Ralph Waldo Emerson portrayed the Transcendentalist movement as an expression of moral idealism. Critics dismissed it as outrageous self-centeredness. Although the Transcendentalists attracted only a small following in their time, they inspired a generation of writers that produced the first great age of American literature. Let's go. This is what I'm talking about. Yes. The 1840s and 1850s brought an outpouring of extraordinary writing. Among the works produced were Representative Men by Emerson, Walden or Life in the Woods by Thoreau, The Scarlet Letter and the House of Seven Gables by Nathaniel Hawthorne, Moby Dick by Herman Melville, Leaves of Grass by Walt Whitman, and hundreds of unpublished poems by Emily Dickinson. Amazing. Perfect. Nathaniel Hawthorne. All right, we're about to go through them. Run down on some 1800s American writers. Nathaniel Hawthorne, the supreme writer of the New England group, never shared the sunny optimism of his neighbors or their perfectionist belief in reform. A native of Salem, Massachusetts, he was haunted by the knowledge of evil bequeathed to him by his Puritan forebears, one of whom, John Hathorne, had been a judge at the Salem witchcraft trials, and another, William Hathorne, spelled differently, not Hawthorne but Hathorne without the W, and another William Hathorne had taken delight in persecuting Quakers. After college, Hawthorne worked in obscurity in Salem before earning a degree of fame with Twice Told Tales, 1837. His central themes examined sin and its consequences, pride and selfishness, secret guilt, and the impossibility of rooting sin out of the human soul. Very interesting. Emily Dickinson, here we are. Beautiful day outside. Emily Dickinson, the most strikingly original of the New England poets, lived with her parents' ancestor in Amherst, Massachusetts. There in a Spartan corner bedroom on the second floor of the family house, the slim, red-haired Dickinson found independence and self-expression in poetry, ever grateful that one is oneself and not somebody else. Only 10 or so of her almost 1,800 poems appeared in print anonymously before her death in 1886 at 55. As she once prophetically wrote, success is counted sweetest by those who ne'er succeed. Once when Emily's niece Maddie visited Dickinson Dickinson locked the bedroom door and excitedly announced, "Maddie, here's freedom." For in her room her soul had moments of escape. Dickinson lived what her niece called a life of exquisite self-containment, in part because her often tyrannical father prohibited her from exploring the world of ideas outside the home. Enlivened by the light of insight and the fire of emotion, Dickinson wrote verse remarkable for its simplicity, brevity, and depth. Whether her solitary existence was the result of severe eye trouble, aching despair generated by her love for a married minister, or fear of her possessive father, Dickinson's isolation and lifelong religious doubts led her to probe the white heat of heartbreak and disappointment in ways unusual for the time. Her often abstract themes were elemental: life, death, fear, loneliness, nature, and above all, the withdrawal of God. A distant, stately lover who no longer could be found. Emily Dickinson, although rarely published during her lifetime, Dickinson's poems offered the literary world of New England a fresh female voice. Edgar Allan Poe. Ooh, I like this guy. I like him a lot. Edgar Allan Poe was fascinated by the menace of death. Born in Boston in 1809 and orphaned as a child, he was raised by foster parents in Richmond, Virginia. He moved to Philadelphia in 1837, where he edited magazines and wrote scathing reviews and terrifying mystery stories. As the creator of the detective story, his influence on literature has been enormous. The poem The Raven, about a man who lost his lover, made Poe a household name. In 1847, however, his young wife died of tuberculosis. Therefore, he was seduced as much by alcohol and drug abuse as by writing. He died at age 40 of mysterious causes. Poe left behind an extraordinary collection of unworldly tales and haunting poems. He used horror to explore the darkest corners of human psychology. To him, fear was the most powerful emotion, so he focused on making the grotesque and supernatural seem disturbingly real. Anyone who has read The Telltale Heart or The Pit and the Pendulum can testify to his success. Very interesting. Herman Melville. Herman Melville was a New Yorker who went to sea as a youth. In 1851, the 32-year-old Melville published Moby Dick, one of the world's greatest novels. In telling the story of Captain Ahab's obsessive quest for an accursed white whale that had devoured his leg, Melville explored the soul's darkest recesses. On one level, the book is a gripping yarn of adventure on the high seas. On another, it explores the unfathomable depths and darkness of human complexity, as Ahab's crazed obsession with finding and killing the white whale turns him into a monster who sacrifices his ship and crew. Amazing. Love it. Walt Whitman, the most controversial American writer during the 19th century, was Walt Whitman, a New York journalist and poet who, like Hawthorne, was a Democrat, devoted to Andrew Jackson's celebration of the common man. He was a self-promoting, robust personality. Whitman wrote excitedly about industrial development, urban life, working men, sailors, and simple humanity. By the time he met Ralph Waldo Emerson, Whitman had been simmering Emerson. By the time he had met Emerson, Whitman had been simmering. Emerson brought him to a boil with his emphasis on defying tradition and celebrating the commonplaces of life, including sexuality and the body. These themes found their way into Whitman's controversial first book of unconventional free verse poems, Leaves of Grass. 1855. In its first year, it sold 10 copies. One reviewer called it an intensely vulgar, nay, absolutely beastly book. Leaves of Grass, however, became more influential with each passing year. Whitman's poems, remarkable for their energy, exuberance, and intimacy, were seasoned with frank sexuality and homoerotic overtones. Although Leaves of Grass was banned in Boston because of its explicit sexuality, Emerson found it the most extraordinary piece of wit and wisdom that America has yet contributed. More conventional literary critics, however, shuddered at the shocking grossness of Whitman's homoerotic references. Manly love, the love of comrades, for the friend I love lay sleeping by my side. Yet, Whitman could never be truly honest about his sexuality. He identified as gay or bisexual in today's terms. For even discussing such perspectives was a felony in the 19th century. Newspapers. The flowering of American literature coincided with a massive expansion in newspaper readership sparked by rapid improvements in printing technology. The availability of mass-produced newspapers costing only a penny transformed daily reading into a form of popular entertainment. By 1850, the United States had more newspapers than any other nation, and they forged a network of communications across the Republic. As readership soared, the content of the papers expanded beyond political news and commentary to include society gossip, sports, and reports of sensational crimes and accidents. "We do not care for the Bible," Henry David Thoreau declared, "but we do care for the newspaper, for it served as a Bible which we read every morning and every afternoon, standing and sitting, riding and walking." The Reform Impulse. In 1842, the United States was awash in reform movements led by dreamers and activists who saw social injustice or immorality and fought to correct them. Lyman Beecher, a prominent preacher and champion of evangelical Christian revivalism, and the father of writer Harriet Beecher Stowe, stressed that the Second Great Awakening was not focused simply on promoting individual conversions. It was also intended to reform human society, which is true. While an impulse to perfect people in society helped excite the reform movements, social and economic changes included the Panic of 1837, and the ensuing Depression invigorated many reformers, most of whom were women. The rise of an urban middle class enabled growing numbers of women to hire cooks and maids, thus freeing them to devote more time to societal concerns. Many joined churches and charitable organizations, most of which were led by men. Both women and men belonging to evangelical societies fanned out across America to organize Sunday schools, spread the gospel, and distribute Bibles to the children of the working poor. Other reformers tackled issues such as living/working conditions in prisons and workplaces, care of the disabled, temperance, reducing the consumption of alcoholic beverages, women's rights, and the abolition of slavery. Transcendentalists sought to improve the lot of the poor, the disenfranchised, and the enslaved. That these reformers often met resistance, persecution, violence, or even death testified to the sincerity of their convictions and the power of their example. As Ralph Waldo Emerson said, "Never mind the ridicule, never mind the defeat. Again, up again, old heart, for there is victory yet for all justice." Temperance. The temperance crusade was among the most widespread of the reform movements. Many people argued that most social problems were rooted in alcohol abuse, for the United States had become a nation of drunkards, which it had. It had become a nation of drunkards, honestly, because they didn't have clean water, so they drank more liquor than anything, even the kids. Crazy. Textile mills and factories even served liquor to workers during their 2 daily breaks. William Cobbett, an English reformer who traveled in the United States, noted in 1819 that virtually every time he visited an American home, his hosts asked him to drink wine or spirits, even in the morning. In 1826, a group of ministers in Boston organized the American Society for the Promotion of Temperance, which sponsored lectures, anti-drinking campaigns, and the formation of local and state societies. A favorite tactic was to ask everyone who pledged to quit drinking to put by their signature a letter T for total abstinence. With that, a new word entered the English language: teetotaler. Like nearly every reform movement of the day, the temperance movement had a wing of absolutists. Those abolitionists formed the American Temperance Union in 1833, and 3 years later it passed a resolution that liquor ought to be prohibited by law. 3 years later, the Temperance Union called for abstinence from all alcoholic beverages, which caused moderates to abstain from the temperance movement. Social reform can be a conservative force. Those who feared the rise of Jacksonian democracy and worried about the surge of poor immigrants from Ireland and Germany, or who dreaded change itself, viewed reform as a means of restoring social control. They were afraid of anything that upset the social status quo. For example, fears that Americans were turning away from the Protestant faith led Lyman Beecher and other evangelicals to found reform societies such as the American Bible Society, the American Sunday School Union, and the American Tract Society, all designed to shore up the centrality of religion and churches in community life. Evangelical reformers thus sought to restrict freedom. No more Sunday mail service or Sunday recreation, no more families without Bibles, no communities without ministers, no more liquors. The Drunkard's Progress. It's a picture. This 1846 pro-temperance print outlines a 9-step process whereby a person became consumed by alcohol abuse, beginning with a glass with a friend and ending with death by suicide. Oh my gosh. So sad. Below the ark are a weeping wife and child. So sad and true in a lot of ways. All right, I don't know if we're going to keep going here. I think we'll read one more section because it looks good. Yeah, it looks good. Prisons and asylums. Prisons and asylums. During the first half of the 19th century, a growing number of Americans believed that people are innately good and capable of perfection. Such an optimistic view brought about major changes in the treatment of prisoners. the disabled, and orphans. Public institutions, often called asylums, emerged for the treatment of social ills. If removed from society, the theory went, the needy and deviant could be made whole again. Unhappily, however, the underfunded and understaffed asylums often became breeding grounds for brutality and neglect. The idea of the penitentiary, a place where the guilty paid for their crimes but also underwent rehabilitation, developed as a new approach to reforming criminals. An early model of the system was the Auburn Penitentiary, which opened in New York in 1816. The prisoners at Auburn had separate cells and gathered only for meals and group labor. Discipline was severe. Only Bibles were permitted for reading. In being led to their workplace, prisoners were chained together, marched in lockstep, and were never face to face or allowed to talk. Those who did were whipped. Wow, that's harsh. Harsh for sure. The system, its advocates argued, had a beneficial effect on the prisoners and saved money, since the facility's workshops supplied prison needs and produced goods for sale at a profit. By 1840, the nation had 12 Auburn-type penitentiaries. The Romantic reform impulse also found an outlet in the care of the insane. By 1800, the insane were usually confined at home with hired keepers or in jails or almshouses where homeless debtors were housed. After 1815, however, asylums that separated the disturbed from the criminal began to appear. The most important figure in boosting awareness of the plight of the mentally ill was Dorothy Lind Dix. A pious Boston school teacher, she was asked to instruct a Sunday school class at East Cambridge House of Correction in 1841. There she found a room full of insane people who had been completely neglected. The scene so disturbed her that she began a 2-year investigation of jails and almshouses in Massachusetts. In a report to the state legislature in 1843, Dix revealed that insane people were confined in cages, closets, cellars, stalls, pens, chained, naked, beaten with rods, and lashed into obedience. She won the support of leading reformers and proceeded to carry her one-woman campaign on behalf of the miserable, the desolate, and the outcast throughout the country and abroad. In the process, she helped to transform social attitudes towards mental illness. Yeah. Something else right there. All right, we're going to be stopping right here because I'm just done. I don't want to do any more right now. But anyway, thanks for watching, you guys. I hope you got your education on with me. Hope you enjoyed it, and just hope you just have a great day. It's a great day outside. It's beautiful. I feel a little bit fried. I think I need to drink some more water and just kind of like, I don't know, recoup before class. But I hope you have a great day. Thanks for watching.